Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Huge Update Interviews, and we're currently with Patrick. We're currently with Patrick from oh god,
Galvanic Games. There you go.
Galvanic Games. I hate the fact my memory never quite works the way I want it to. It always forgets stuff as I'm saying it. But yeah, we're currently with Patrick from Galvanic Games, and we're going to be talking about some of the projects that he's currently been working on. So,
Yep.
say hello, Patrick.
Howdy.
Hey. So you guys set up more or less just like a year ago, didn't you?
Yeah, it was our first day was April 7th of 2015, and the three of us left a ad agency where we were making mini games for Xbox 360, mobile web, and Royce and I, the artist, had been working on a prototype for about a year called Space Junk, and we decided we knew enough at that point that we could strike out on our own and make a shot of it.
So it's the four of you, isn't it? Is that right? That make up the team.
There are four of us. CJ, our engineer, joined right after PAX Prime in 2015.
Yeah. And so what was kind of the development process behind the idea of Gurgamoth Lives? Because that was your first kind of breakout hit, wasn't it, under the Galvanic Games kind of brand?
Yeah, so actually we started with Space Junk. It became the Rustbelt, and that's what we took to PAX Prime. We'd been working on it for about 6 months, and we showed off that game. It was sort of a vertical slice, a prototype. We showed that off at PAX Rising, and a month after, we did a game jam for PlayFab, and that's where Gurgamoth Lives was born. And we fell in love with it, and it ended up sort of taking over our process because it was a much smaller title than the Rustbelt, and we knew we could get it out in 3 months of dev time.
Yeah. Definitely. How did you kind of fund this project? Because you mentioned you left all of you left from sort of a solid job. How did you kind of fund the Gurgamoth Lives and also sort of the Rustbelt? How have you gone about that?
So when we left, I managed to put some of my own savings as well as some help from friends and family, and that gave us 6 months of development time. And the plan was to spend that time getting the Rustbelt to PAX, and then use the coverage from that to keep developing the game. And we had some success in that regard because we got enough funding to continue for another 6 months. But it wasn't particularly for the Rustbelt. It was just sort of general investment money for the company.
Fantastic. And who was this funding from then? Which kind of investors picked you up?
These were all private investors, and these were all friends and family still. But they saw the progress we had been making up to that point, and decided that we had a good chance of succeeding.
Yeah. So you mentioned
go for it, Al.
Yeah. So you mentioned that getting to PAX was an actual milestone for you guys. Is PAX that big a deal now for people like you in the situation? Can it be
definitely
big, pitch platform?
It's really strong, actually. I mean, I think there's a sense of credibility in reaching it, and it was hard for us to get into at first because we were so small and so unknown, especially. Those booths fill up very early, and so by the time we had a prototype of the Rustbelt worth showing off, most of the booths had sold out. But we took it to Intel Buzz, a small Seattle workshop, and we took home second place in their Indies highlight. And with that trailer, we sent that trailer to PAX, and they're like, "Oh, we have a spot for you. You can show this game off. This game's awesome."
That basically answered my next question. I was like, how did you get into PAX? How on earth did you get a booth? So they saw you and they liked you and thought, we're going to take you further. Did it require any financial back? Was it more of just under their recommendation, they said, we'll take you on, don't worry about it?
So, I mean, booths cost money at PAX, but that was part of our budget in the first place. Our goal when we started was we are going to take this prototype to PAX and see where we can go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was kind of under the pretense originally that Gurgamoth came first, and then The second game, God, we've mentioned it so many times now.
Rust
The
Belt.
Rustbelt, yeah, of course, was coming afterwards, but it really was a different process with you guys, wasn't it? It was you were actually developing the Rustbelt, and then Gorgamoth just kind of came alongside as a kind of working project, and then came out first, I imagine, and you're releasing the
Yeah,
Rustbelt shortly. Is that right?
that's correct.
Do you have a release date in mind for the Rustbelt at all for the viewers out there?
No, no, it's so the Gurgamoth is in part like us getting a really solid product out first, but it's also
Yeah.
meant to be something to help us finish funding the Rust Belt.
Ah, cool. It's a very good idea actually using one project to bounce off and fund the other one.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, I wish we had started with Gurgamoth because, well, so the Rust Belt really helped us establish this pipeline in this process. There's
Mm.
like those first 6 months, we built this system through which we could get the art animated and into the game, and the game built around that extremely quickly. And so when we jumped into Gurgamoth, it was just like jumping into the middle of a jump rope session. We already knew what we were doing. We were able to very quickly build the base game and then iterate on it and then add content seamlessly.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Because you mentioned this in your very first blog post that I've read, and you also mentioned something that seems very much like a mission statement for your studio, which is it has to be fun within 30 seconds. Is that something you guys still hold on to?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Is it?
The other thing that we obsess about is it has to be as fun to watch as it is to play. And just took Gurgamoth down to PAX South in San Antonio, and it had that effect immediately, where people were playing, and then we'd watch people walking along the booth do a double take and then come over so that they could watch the game being played.
How was PAX South for you in the end? I saw you
Oh,
guys are getting on a couple of streams, so like how like you saying like people were taking double takes and all that, so I'm guessing it all went really well for you guys.
it was fantastic. I liked it better in a lot of ways as an indie than PAX Prime, because at PAX Prime, all the big people are there. There's huge Bethesda booths, there's Microsoft, Sony, and when the doors open, everyone runs to those booths because that's what they're there for. But at PAX South, a lot of the big players haven't shown up yet, and so as an indie, you have a much bigger audience. People are a lot more willing to come up and check it out and say, "Hey, what is this?"
Mm.
Right. And so back to the idea of it being fun to look at and fun to like pick up and play. Like, did that come out of like actually, like, did that come out of like working at Microsoft, and like doing those mobile games or doing those like small ad games? Did it come out of like something like that, or was it something more entrenched in like personal history that the ethos came out of?
I think there's a huge culture now of people who enjoy watching video games even more than they enjoy playing them,
Yeah.
and so we aim to build to that audience. But it also comes from our background because at the ad agency we were making ad games, which it's really hard to make an advertisement fun to play, and so a lot of our games that came out, we wanted them to feel more like games than advertisements. And because they're such small scope projects, we'd finish a project in 2 weeks to 6 weeks. You had to focus on the core loop and cut everything else. Like just that 30 seconds of gameplay, focus on refining that to perfection.
Mm. Just the core mechanic, really, more than anything else, and refining that.
Right.
And with Gurgamoth Lives, was there like any other games that influenced you? You know, like because there's quite a lot of other games that involve like 4-player multiplayers, like Chasing Aurora, for example. Did any of those influence the design of it, or was it a purely kind of outside of that and just from the ad agency, sort of the games you made out of that?
Oh, definitely. We played about 20 hours worth of Towerfall while we were developing this game, and we've played a fair amount of Lethal League and Star Wall and Samurai Gun as well. So a lot of those new greats like helped us understand what the design problems were in the space and how we could address them in a way that was unique to Gurgamoth.
Awesome, and of course it's a full-player, multiplayer game. Has it helped? Do you play a lot of it, in-house sort of thing? Does it help kind of rectify any arguments that you come across? Who's the winner?
We haven't used it to decide any company arguments yet, although mainly because CJ, our engineer, is the best at the game, and I'd rather he not steer our future.
Maybe we should have a handicap, just for him.
So there is something we've added recently is auto balancing. And this is something that's going to be toggleable in the released version. But right now, as you fall behind, it adds a catch-up mechanic. It gives you more ammo. It gives you a shield so that you can stay in the game.
Yeah. I imagine it's very difficult to balance, of course, isn't it? Because it's rubber banding, isn't it? The rubber banding effect. You don't want the winner to feel like it's not fair because he's better, right. But you don't want the losers to be feeling a bit disheartened because they're not doing as well.
Oh, definitely, it is hard.
Yeah, and what's been the most challenging part of the development process, really?
So there's a couple things that have been really challenging. One of them was deciding whether or not to include internet multiplayer, and in the end, we decided not to because of the sheer complexity. Our game is very fast, and as soon as things start to lag, like if you're on a Wi-Fi network or if you're on, if you're across countries, then the game would become immediately unplayable. And so it was a hard decision to make to nix that, but I think it's the better choice in the long run, even though it hurts us in many ways. Like the playability of the game, you have to get your friends in the same room with you.
Yeah, and well, was that choice made just of the fact of it being a complex issue and it would take you more time, or are you guys actually looking to just try and just brew that couch co-op play mentality?
It's both, because we set a certain speed for the game that felt good, and we didn't want to sacrifice that.
Yeah, and is that something you've gauged by doing your doing your cons and all that, by getting player feedback, seeing them enjoying that speed, enjoying the level of competition you can get out of playing face to face almost?
Oh, definitely. We're in a indie game workshop in Seattle, and one of the greatest things about it is that there are a lot of community events there. So there's always new people coming to the office to check out the space, to party, and it's been a really good opportunity for us to get the game in people's hands, and to get constant feedback and to make adjustments based on how we're seeing people play the game.
Yeah, that's interesting. You say that so it's an indie workshop you work in. How did you come across it, and how is it to set up something in that?
So when we started the company in April, we moved into a co-working space in downtown, and it was a brand new space, and it was specifically for indie developers. It only lasted about 6 months, but at the same time that was ending, the Indies Workshop, which is run by Chris Floyd from Indie Mega Booth, and two people, Raj and Zach from 17-Bit, that opened in Soto, just south of the stadiums. And so because we had already been working in a co-working space, we jumped onto their new project, and it's really well run. It's a really nice space. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's a great answer. So is it just those guys you're hanging out with, or is there is there any other talent that are hanging out in that space right now?
Oh, definitely. So we're the only team that's completely in there. All four of us have a corner of the space, but there's a handful of other people who work on their own projects, who work as parts of other bigger teams. There's a couple members from Spry Fox, and yeah, there was even, I think, a games journalist there for a while, working on one of the desks.
Not bad, some free advertisement, Did you find, of course, there's a lot of developers there. Do you all coordinate with each other and help each other out? Give advice, give creative feedback. Is that something you kind of encourages in that space?
Oh, definitely. We have Feedback Thursdays, where people show off sections of their game or problems that they're trying to solve. so that they can get more feedback from people who haven't had their heads in the same problem for the last 48 hours.
I guess, yeah, you're not kind of just stuck there thinking, oh, how can I make this better? If you can see another developer, they can offer a fresh set of eyes, can't they?
Oh, definitely.
What if you were, like, say, as a new developer coming out, would you recommend that they would try and invest and join you in these sort of spaces, or would you say it's better if they work at home? You know, what would you give as advice to someone who's fresh on the market, wants to make a video game right now, an indie title of some degree?
I think one of these co-working spaces is worth the investment. I mean, I'm obviously a little biased because we've been in them for almost a year now, but I think they offer more than they cost, and the reason for that is, like, you get this exposure. You're not stuck on your own. You have a chance to, like, sit during lunch with other people and say, this is what I'm struggling with. Have you ever seen something like this? Have you ever solved this problem? And you definitely don't get that when you're in your garage or your basement.
No, I can imagine you're kind of quite isolated if you were in that kind of situation, whereas this is a much more communal space where you can, I guess, express how you feel and what's going on.
Yeah. But I also recognize that there are a fair amount of people in the games industry that are more introverted and prefer to work on their own. So there is that disadvantage.
I guess, yeah, it depends on your own personal preference and doesn't your own personality. Looking at your website, of course, on your team, apart from, of course, the four of you, there's also a Sega Dreamcast and a plant. I'm presuming the Sega Dreamcast is because it's your unanimous favourite consoles. Is there any story behind the plant, though?
Oh, that was from our previous workplace. There was a aloe vera plant on the windowsill, and lacking any sort of HR, we decided that was our front desk manager.
Why does it link to the Daigo moment, though?
The Dreamcast?
Yeah, you're on the... Yeah, it says HR manager gold star achievement, and then that link goes to the Daigo moment on YouTube.
So we play a lot of Street Fighter on the Dreamcast,
yeah.
And you mentioned Cerebral earlier, and we went on their stream once and played with them, and they have all these fight sticks, and, like, they're extremely good players, and we were just playing there with our Dreamcast controllers and doing terribly. So we love playing Street Fighter 3, but we're also quite bad at it.
Did you challenge them to the Dreamcast version, to kind of have a bit more of a fair advantage?
We did, and it was painful to watch. Someone jumped on their stream and said, "Are these guys any good?" And then a minute later said, "Oh, never mind, no, they aren't."
So with because we were talking about it at the very beginning, and I want to kind of delve more into it. You said that Rustbelt came out of a previous project that was being worked on. Was it Space Junk? Was it called? Or Space Junk?
Yeah, Space Junk.
Yeah. So I'm guessing it was the hook mechanic that transferred. So what made you guys change it from space to what looks like a post-apocalyptic, like Mad Max setting?
So when we started everything, we decided to spend a couple weeks sort of refining the concept that we've been working on and prototyping specific mechanics that we wanted to focus on. And the one that was the most exciting to me was, you're flying around a spaceship, you can grab salvage, like asteroids, you can grab derelict ships, and you can drag them around and do stuff with them. So as we started prototyping that mechanic of, like, hooking onto another object in space and dragging it around, it started to feel like you were driving a truck. And so one of the last ideas I had pitched at the ad agency was a Mad Max game where you're driving around the desert. And Royce had drawn up these incredible sketches of, like, dust plumes coming behind the truck, like the desert wasteland scenery. And so those things kind of came together for us. We'd had this idea for a Mad Maxy game, and we had this mechanic that worked really well with a top-down viewpoint. So we decided just take it a little bit further, spend a month fleshing it out, seeing if it was something that we believed in and that could draw a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And so by the end of the month, we had this very rough prototype, but it showed a lot of promise, and we just decided to keep going with it.
Yeah. So the way that you're pretty much selling Rustbelt right now, it sounds like it is going to be like a single player game.
It is a single player game.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's going to be. It sounds like it from like what you were saying before. It's just like it kind of like came from like a little project, from like a little pitch to something you guys were more invested in. Has it grown? You've been developing on it. Has it like the ambition on it grown more and more? Like, because you guys like talk about like building settlements, like RPG elements, and stuff like that. So. As this project, like, are you giving it the time to make it bigger and better? Is that something you guys are like planning, like working on that right now? Is that like partly why you're making Gurgamoth push out first, as it were?
In a way, we're actually, like, after we got back from PAX, we spent a month rebuilding a couple subsections of it, especially the physics, because we had seen where people were struggling with the driving, and we wanted to like revisit that core mechanic to make sure that was in the right state. I think one of our biggest obsessions is cutting features so that we don't have too much feature creep. The town is an interesting mechanic because originally that was your vehicle progression. And as you went out, you would find like buildings in the environment and drag those back home so that you could keep upgrading your town. But as we discussed it and as we looked at how the mechanic was playing out, we started focusing more on the garage, which is where you swap out the parts of your truck and where you customize the way it feels and the way it drives and the way it fights.
So would I have more of an arcade-based sort of progression, like score, or is it more like the player has to complete a series of objectives to move on to the next level?
We wanted it to be a little bit more sandboxy, in that you're going out into the wastes and it's more about finding interesting things and fighting interesting enemies and gathering the things you need to open up new paths, new areas, and new upgrades for your truck.
I'm loving the art style and how you make the wasteland look so like diverse. Looking at the photo, of course, of all the 4 different kind of environments that you've kind of mapped out. You just have a really, really nice way of kind of describing the wasteland, like rather than the kind of the greys of like the old Fallout 3s. And it does have that essence of Mad Max, especially the sort of new game, almost like if you took the kind of modernized Mad Max game, took it from a top-down perspective, and then added this really interesting kind of hook, swing, and destroy mechanic that you've implemented. You mentioned about bosses. How are they going to work in the game? Like on the website, it mentions about bosses.
So we actually haven't prototyped one yet, but the bosses are the 4 truckers of the apocalypse, and each
nice.
Each trucker has a region of their own. So Drought is in the former ruins of Lake Erie, or the Erie Desert, and he's he's pumped all of the water out of the basin, all the remaining water out of the basin, and stored it so that he can run his own water monopoly. And so we had designed the original boss around this sort of fire truck with all these pumpers that can help him drain any kind of liquid out of the rocks around him. But yeah, it's interesting because we haven't actually built that fight out yet.
It'll be really cool to kind of see how it all plays out.
I want to hear more about the truckers of the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Like how they come about. Like how
yeah.
It just was kind of a natural flow because the Rust Belt is set in this post-apocalyptic Midwest, and so this idea of these truckers who are building giant vehicles out of the remains of out of salvage of other vehicles and are using them to to lock down the region in some way or another. Just emerge naturally.
All right.
Nice. And will your actual truck itself be able to grow like the bosses, or will it stay the sort of same size, but you'll be upgrading its parts?
Your truck stays about the same size, although its silhouette changes a bit as you add beefier parts on and armor and stuff like that.
And looking at sort of the way the gameplay kind of interacts, is it going to be kind of for mobile, because you've worked on mobile before and working with tablet controls, or is it going to be like a PC release, or are you looking at consoles?
We're focused on PC, Mac, and Steam OS, although we also would like to see it on consoles.
It's a really fun game. This looks really, really cool. I love the art style. It just looks fantastic.
Oh, Royce is a fantastic artist.
Yeah.
It's as you said, like it kind of goes down to your core concept of making something fun really quickly and using that core mechanic, which is in this case, of course, is the swinging hook. So for the rest of 2016, it's going to be quite a busy year by the sound of it. You've got 2 games to kind of, one you're releasing and then one you're going to be developing on afterwards. Have you also taken into consideration the kind of updates for Gurgamoth Lives, like the aftermath, like marketing it and doing any patches whilst trying to develop the other game?
At the moment, we're just trying to get it out. We really want to see what the reception's like before we make any other decisions with it, because it could be the local multiplayer market is very niche, and it's kind of crowded too, because local multiplayer games are extremely fun to make. They're, I think, the most fun game to make, and they're addicting for that reason, because you can make a bunch of changes and then you get to play, you get to test them with your coworkers, and it's a really fun development cycle. But it's also kind of dangerous for that reason. I've heard other game developers like talk about local multiplayer games as toxic, because they're a really hard game to sell. So our goal is to launch it and see if it's a game that people love. And if it is, then that's a really good opportunity for us to expand on it, because we have so many ideas of what we can add to the game.
Yeah, it definitely does sound like Gurgamoth Lives definitely has a story behind it, because saying it's a local multiplayer is one thing, but saying it's a local multiplayer in which you sacrifice yourself to an elder god is definitely a bigger selling pitch than on average. So it definitely sounds like you guys have something planned. It sounds like there's a story behind.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there going to be a story behind it? Like who is Gurgamoth, sort of thing?
We want to keep it a little bit mysterious. Although we do have an announcement trailer coming out tomorrow that I'm really excited about. It's a little silly thing, but it's basically Gurgamoth talking to the audience.
Oh, fantastic. By the time this goes live, of course, people have probably already seen it, but if they haven't, they've got to go check it out.
Yeah. Because there's also there's another thing that you guys put out on the 13th, January 13th, of just this little GIF of just almost a single player mode. By the looks of it, it's the saw blades in the room, and you got to dart around it.
So yeah, we did prototype out a single player mode. We ended up cutting it for this initial release. It's one of those things we'd love to come back to, though.
Yeah.
The problem with it was it just wasn't very fun, and the amount of time it would have taken us to flesh it out seemed kind of risky.
And so, what's kind of your marketing strategy for Gurgamoth Lifts?
For Gurgamoth,
is the name as much of a mouthful for you guys as it is for us?
It's for us, yeah.
No, so actually Gurgamoth Lives is the name of the prototype. The game that's coming out on February 16th is just Gurgamoth.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right.
It's still going to be hard, I think, for me to pronounce it, but at least it makes it a bit shorter.
We have seen a lot of people struggle with the name. The most common mispronunciation is Gurgamel.
Yeah, from Smurfs. That's exactly what I immediately thought as well.
But so we're kind of experimenting a lot with the marketing of it. Because it's a smaller game, we can afford to take a few more risks with it and just find out what works. So the experimental trailer we're releasing tomorrow is an example of that. And we're going to try some other trailers as well, some gameplay trailers, some like a launch trailer. And we're also trying, like the hardest thing is because it's such a small community that loves these kind of games, like how do we find them, tell them about the game and make them excited about it? PAX South helped a lot because we saw that people who do love Towerfall and do love Lethal League also really enjoyed our game and wanted to come back and play more of it. After we launch, we're going to also be at PAX East in Boston. And that's a great opportunity for us as well because we've never gone to a convention with a game out, and we don't know how does that impact sales. How does that impact like our people searching for our game and downloading it on Steam?
Definitely. So it's using really conventions more than anything else to kind of push it forward, and I guess that works perfectly with a 4-player multiplayer experience because you can have everyone playing, getting a crowd around the screen. Egging people on.
Yeah, that's one of the wonderful things we saw at PAX South is when people see a crowd, they're attracted to it, and so the crowd grows.
Yeah, and definitely if you've got like the selling pitch of, well, as the selling pitch is just like people gathering around, people are having a good time, and at the same time you can just say like, oh, by the way, it's also out right now. People can just buy it immediately. I mean, like Kickstarter saw like a huge success of that, like when like card games started discovering like going to PAX and like launching a Kickstarter at the same time really helped them like just basically make their Kickstarter in the weekend almost. So there definitely seems to be a good sense of idea, like a good idea behind that for sure.
It was interesting because with the Rustbelt, we ordered about 1,500 postcards, like little promotional postcards, and we used those. We handed those out to get people in to check out the game and to learn more about it. But with Gurgamoth, we left the postcards on the table, and by Sunday at noon, we had run out. We hadn't handed out a single one. People were coming up to grab them because they wanted to know more about it.
That's been like very encouraging, seeing that there's a lot of interest, and without even having to try, people were very much like, "Oh, I want to check this out. I want to see." They've obviously seen like people playing it, like, "I want to see what's going to happen with this later on down the line."
Yeah, it was very encouraging.
I now see the many eyes of Gurgamoth. There we go, Gurgamoth. I'm thinking, I don't know why in my head, I'm thinking like some sort of giant moth with hundreds of eyes.
It's a great name in that we have no competitors on Google, but it is a terrible name in that if someone tries to tell someone else about it, it's kind of a mouthful.
But I guess it's part of the fun, isn't it? You know, there's people saying, okay, how do you pronounce it? You know, it's one of those games you can actually all kind of debate. No, it's told like this. No, it's like this.
My favorite mispronunciation that I heard during the weekend was Gurgamoth.
That sounds like a Godzilla monster, doesn't it, really?
It does.
And so, you know, what are you most looking forward about, I guess, going off that a little bit, what are you most looking forward about 2016? Is there any developers that you'd recommend like our listeners to kind of follow or we should check out?
We have some friends in Seattle that are working on a game called Astro Near. System Era is the name of their studio, and it looks fantastic. I've had a chance to play it a couple times. It's like Minecraft on Mars, or it's like Minecraft meets The Martian, the new movie. So I'm really excited about that. That comes out for early access later this year.
That sounds very cool. Like quite an emotional Minecraft game, then, really.
And I think it has online. I think it has online co-op, and the style of the game is gorgeous. Like when they released their trailer last year, everyone was just blown away.
And so were they also part of this this kind of hub, this game hub that is created in Seattle? Was it that they were just kind of separate developers and you kind of met up with them?
Seattle's kind of interesting because it's split into multiple sections by water, but still there's a pretty active and robust indies community that goes on in the city. But the water creates a kind of barrier.
Let's see. So it's
between
different,
the east
different
side
sections.
and the west side.
Ah. Do you ever have like little battles, between east and west?
Well, not little battles, but the west side developers have a lot of events, and the east side developers have a lot of events. And when things go right, like everyone does the same side.
Very cool. And so, well, I guess it's the kind of point in the interview we kind of asked, would you like to kind of pimp your stuff? Where can we find you? Where can our listeners kind of locate you guys and find where, Gurgamoth lives or Gurgamoth is going to be? And, of course, your up-and-coming game, Rustbelt.
Sure.
Or the Rustbelt, rather.
Yeah. Gurgamoth comes out on Steam for PC, Mac, and Steam OS on February 16th. And you can find out more about it on Gurgamoth.com.
Fantastic. And, of course, where can they kind of find and contact you? Do you have like a Twitter handle, or if people have questions they want to know about your games, where can they find and talk to you?
Our Twitter handle is @Galvanic Games, and that's the best place to reach all four of us.
Fantastic. Any words at all?
No, just thank you very much for giving us time to interview you, and thanks for
thanks so much
towards the game you just mentioned, Astronoids.
Martian meets Minecraft.
I've definitely seen this game before because it's low poly and you get to like morph the world, like get to demorph it. It looks awesome.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept.
Yeah, it's definitely one to check out for sure. So yeah, just for that.
Nice. Well, thank you very much, Patrick, for coming on again. Really appreciate it. It's a really interesting. Every indie has like a different story to tell, and I feel yours again is quite unique, having two games working kind of at the same time and developing both almost at the same time. Is something we haven't come across yet on doing our little interview series. So thanks very much for that.
Well, thanks for having me on your show. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, we are Huge Update. You can find us at hugeupdate.squarespace.com, and you can find us on Twitter at Huge Update, and hopefully soon. Still haven't got confirmation yet, but soon we should be on iTunes. So again, thank you very much, Patrick, for coming on the show and showing us your story about development. And can everybody just say goodbye really awkwardly round about now? Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Oh.